During this section and the following one, we are going to be deploying and securing our WebSocket server. This is going to be a very interesting section, this one and the following one, of course, because we are going to be dealing a little with the servers, configurations, web servers like Nginx, reversed proxies, etc. But as you can see, we are not going to, let's say, coding so much. In fact, we are going to make some configurations, some little changes in our original project, but mainly those classes are going to be on the server. So I am going to assume that you already know how to connect with your VPS or your server, that you already have one, that you have a domain, that you know how to configure all of that. And I'm just going to show you the steps to clone, deploy, and secure your own secure WebSocket server using, of course, Laravel WebSockets. Now, if you have doubts, if you don't know how to do it, so just skip this section and search online if you prefer, or ask to me and I'm going to give you the access to a VPS related course where you are going to be allowed to deploy, configure, and secure your own server with Nginx, PHP, MySQL, etc. Okay? So, with that in mind, what we are going to do during this specific class is to obtain the structure of the Laravel WebSockets project that we already created. We are going to clone that into our VPS and eventually we are going to configure everything to get it working. So, to clone this, as you remember, we have a GitHub repository, a public GitHub repository for this. So just go there. Remember, you have the URLs and the details about this repository in a previous class. So go there, copy this. You can use HTTPS or you have an online session, so you can use SSH. Whatever of that is going to work. So once we are there, we are going to go to var www, and inside there we have a lot of projects. If you probably have there your domains, your subdomains, your Laravel, PHP projects, or any other that you have, and we are going to clone that using Git. So we have sudo git clone, and there we are going to put this location, and we are going to save that into a new folder, which is going to be wssupersecuredomain.com. Yes, this is the domain that is pointing to this specific server. Of course, you surely are going to have a different domain. You may use a different subdomain, but just take that into account at the moment that we are configuring this, because the name of the domain is very important. So let's just press enter, confirm the password, and once it is cloned, so we are going to be in that folder, and you can check there the full Laravel structure. So the first step is using sudo chown. We are going to recursively assign permissions to the www.data user over the storage folder of our project and over the bootstrap cache folder. So let me clear this, and we are going to assign permissions over bootstrap cache, and there we have. At this point, those locations are used by Laravel to put there the compiled views, the cache files, etc. So we need permissions for that. Then we are going to need the environment file configuration, which is going to be different this time because we are going to be in production. So let's copy the example one, or we can create a new one from scratch. This is going to be called and must be called .env. And once we are there, what we are going to do to save a little of time is go to our project on Sublime or in your IDE or code editor. And there we are going to take the contents of the .env file and just paste it there. So let's confirm. You have all of that. Mainly the main reason to copy that are the credentials for the pusher, app key, the secret, the ID, etc. And in the top, we need to change the environment to production, and that the book is going to be false. Additionally, we are going to use HTTPS, and we are going to connect that to ws.supersecuredomain.com. I know that we currently don't have HTTPS, but we are going to, so let's put that in HTTPS from the scratch. Then, as you can see, we have the SQLite file, or basically the database connection using SQLite. We don't need to change that if you prefer, but if you want to use MySQL, etc. So you can go ahead, create the database, change the credentials here, and everything is going to work exactly the same. For now, as we are going to use SQLite, let's press Ctrl X to exit, confirm the changes, and we will need to create that file. So let's use sudo touch. And there in the database folder, we are going to create a file which is going to be and must be again database.sqlite. At this point, so we can execute the migrations to create the tables that Laravel WebSockets needs to use to store the statistics of usage, etc. But before of that, well, we need to install the dependencies of our project using Composer. So let's use sudo composer install. And as it is a production environment, we don't need the development requirements, or basically the development dependency. So we need the now dev flag. Let's wait while Composer installs the components, and after that we should be allowed to run the migrations and finally having our WebSocket server running. So let's go to execute sudo php artisan migrate. Let's confirm as we are on production, and there you have. At this point, you have your project completely functional and should be working properly, but of course, this cannot be accepted yet because we need to configure our server to receive the connections, direct that to the corresponding location as we are going to see in a following class, and especially to be sure that we get it working for the WebSocket serve command, and that is that we are going to see in the following class. So see you there to verify how to be sure that this command is going to be running every time. At this point, our Laravel WebSockets project is perfectly functional. That is very good. We performed very well in the previous class, but we have to resolve something. How can we be sure that the WebSocket server is going to be running all the time? Because remember, this is not a regular WebSocket server. No, this is a command from the Laravel project from PHP Artisan that we need to execute, and we need to be sure to get this working all the time. So that is exactly what we are going to do during this class to be sure that every time this component, this specific PHP Artisan command is going to be running, and for that we can use something called supervisor. So the problem is this: if you execute sudo php artisan WebSockets serve, let me clear this. This is going to be running perfectly. But first, this is running in the port 6001, which is fine, but we need to solve that in the following class. And second, if you need to do something, well, you basically can't. It is not going to do anything in your console. You probably need to open a new connection. And additionally, which is very most important, you will need to open or keep this window open all the time to keep this working. If you close it, well, the command is going to be finished, and that is not good, of course. We need to resolve that, and as I said, supervisor is going to do that for you. Supervisor is going to keep that specific command that you specify all the time, depending on the configuration that you give to it. So before to that, we need to be sure to use apt install and install, of course, the supervisor components. So let's use sudo apt install supervisor. Let's confirm. And there you have. So if we go to the etc supervisor location after the installation, you will get there a conf.d folder. So let's go there. And inside that folder, which is currently empty, we can create the configuration file for our WebSocket server. So let's use nano with sudo, of course. And we are going to call this ws.supersecuredomain.com. Doesn't matter the name that you prefer. The only important thing is that you can identify it. I use supersecuredomain.com, and be sure that it finished with .conf. That is important, but the name just needs to be a name that you can use. Then we can start creating the configuration. So the first step is how we are going to identify this program. And with that, we just need to say program and the name of it, and it is going to be ws_supersecuredomain. Of course, once again, you can use a different name if you prefer. that is going to be the identification of this specific command or that task that supervisor needs to run. Then we need to specify the command that we are going to be executing. So we are going to use PHP from the global location user bin PHP, and there we are going to use the artisan in that specific location, which is var www.ws.supersecuredomain.com, and there of course we have the artisan command that we can execute with PHP. Then what is the command? Well, this is going to be websockets serve. That's all. This is the command. This is basically the same, but using full roads to the PHP artisan WebSocket serve. Once we have that, well, we need to say that this command needs to auto start every time. So we need to say auto start equals to true, and the auto restart to true as well. So what it is doing, the first one is, if you for some reason restart your BPS, so the command is going to start immediately with the BPS. So the command is going to start immediately with the BPS or with the server, and the auto restart is, if for some reason, even when the BPS or the server has not been restarted, but the command stops for some reason, well, it is going to try to auto restart immediately, and you are going to be sure that this command, the WebSocket serve, is not going to be down anytime. So let's press Ctrl X, confirm the changes, and now, after clearing, we are going to say to supervisor to update its current configuration. So we have sudo supervisorctl, and we say update. So it is going to say added the process group with the name of WS Super Secure Domain. That's good. And we can be sure to start this using supervisorctl start. And we need to specify the name of the command that we are going to start, or the program, which is wssupersecuredomain.com. Now, it probably is going to fail, depends on the case, saying already started, which is good. It means that the command is currently running, very nice, but just in case, be sure to execute this to get that element running without any issue. So, if we go back to the location of our project in var www.wssupersecuredomain.com and try to execute sudo php artisan WebSocket serve, it is going to fail, if we put that correctly of course, because as you can see, it is already in use the host and the port. That is nice, and that is a confirmation that the command is running our PHP artisan WebSocket serve. Anyway, just in case, you can use supervisorctl status to verify the status of the current programs that you have. And you can see here how the WS Super Secure Domain program is running with this process ID and has been running during 1 minute and 23 seconds. So that's all. At this point, you can be completely sure that even if you exit or you restart your server, once the server is available, it is going to be running all the time and the service is not going to be down anytime. That's all. See you in the following class to start redirecting the traffic to our WebSocket server from the web server in Nginx. This time we are going to open the direct access to our WebSocket server. And in fact, well, that is not exactly direct access. We are going to do that through our Nginx web server. The VPS that we have deployed here is using Nginx, which is a web server, a very good web server. And we can use Nginx to receive the request and then redirect or proxy that directly to our WebSocket server in the local host and using the 6001 port. That's good. And you might be wondering why we are going to do that using Nginx instead of just opening the 600 port or something like that. Well, there are several reasons. First, using Nginx in front of our WebSocket server is going to provide us a lot of security, a lot of flexibility regarding the configuration, the security measures, the headers, the HTTPS redirections, DDoS preventions, etc. And additionally, it's going to bring you a flexibility because results that there exist several services, and some of them very popular, that do not allow you to open custom ports. So you are limited only to the port 80 for HTTP and 443 for HTTPS. You cannot open, for example, the port 6001 or any other that you need. So, there might exist the possibility that you are or someone else using that service with that restriction, so we are going to configure a reversed proxy on Nginx. And for that, we need to go to the Nginx location on etc Nginx sites available. In sites available, we have located all the configurations of our websites. There, we are going to create a new one with nano, sudo nano, ws.supersecuredomain.com. Be sure to be consistent with that. Even when it is not mandatory, you need to probably do it to avoid any kind of confusion. So, we have an empty file, and we are going to start configuring this server block in order to pass and proxy the connections to this specific server name to the local host and in fact to the local WebSockets server. So let's start with a server directive. So we have server, this is going to be a block, and inside we are going to say, hey, you're going to listen to the port 80. And in case that you might be using IP version 6, so we can do this specific syntax. Basically the same, you're listening to the IP version 4 or IP version 6 in the port 80. Then we need to specify which server we are going to listen to the request, because you can receive requests for different domains or subdomains. So in this case, using server name, we are going to see that we are going to be listening to ws.supersecuredomain.com, which is exactly what we have here. So remember to be finishing every single line with a semicolon, and once we have the server name, here is the magic trick. In fact, we need to specify to what specific condition the request needs to accomplish in order to be proxied to our WebSocket server. So in this case, we are going to say that the location needs to start with app to be proxied to our WebSocket server. So let's do that. In this case, be sure to issue here location /app, and there inside we are going to specify all the magic. So the first part is we need to pass using the proxy. So proxy pass the request to the HTTP one in the local IP address, so this is going to work locally in our server, and to the port which is 6001. Remember to finish with the semicolon. So once we receive a request to this port, to this server name, and to this specific starting path, we are going to pass that to our local server that is running here in this specific port. And yes, you probably are guessing good. This is exactly the port where we are running our configuration for the WebSocket server. Then we are going to specify some security concerns and to be sure that everything is going to work properly. So we are going to use proxy read timeout to 60. Then we have the proxy connection timeout to the same value, and we are going to disable the redirects. Then we are going to upgrade or say to Nginx to upgrade the connections that it is receiving in regular HTTP to the corresponding connection, which is in this case WebSockets. Remember, those are different protocols, so we need to specify to Nginx to upgrade. So first, we are going to specify the minimum HTTP version, so proxy HTTP version, which is going to be 1.1. Then we need to establish a set of headers. So we have proxy set header, and the first one is going to be upgrade, and the value is going to be HTTP upgrade, which is basically a variable from Nginx specifying what we are upgrading exactly to which protocol we are going to do that. Then we have another header, so let's copy proxy set header, and this one is going to be called connection. And connection is going to be equals to upgrade, be sure to use the quotation here. And finally we have a third header, which is host, using, of course, the corresponding host from where we are receiving the connection. And finally, we have a proxy cache bypass, saying that we are going to bypass again the same variable HTTP upgrade. All of this is very recommended and require especially those headers and especially the proxy path. The other parts are basically security connections and security measures that you might wondering how to improve if you prefer, but normally those are the recommended configurations even in the documentation of Laravel WebSockets. So, if everything is okay, we should be able to press Ctrl X, confirm the changes, and there we have. Now, we need to create a symbolic link using sudo ln-s, saying that we want a symbolic link from etc nginx, sites available, wssupersecure-domain.com, and the location is going to be etc nginx sites enabled, and we are going to use exactly the same name. This is important because there is where Nginx is loading eventually the configuration of the host. So if we check currently the contents of the sites enabled folder, you are going to see all the symbolic links, including the latest one pointing to the file that we just created. So if everything is okay, we should be able to execute sudo nginx-t to verify the syntaxes. And fortunately, we did it because, in fact, I have an issue. So let's open the wssupersecure-domain.com and change the proxy connection because it is proxy connect timeout. So let's change that. Let's save the changes again. Let's verify the syntax one more time. It is fine now. So let's clear this and restart the process. Sudo systemctl reload, and we are going to reload Nginx service. At this point, every single request that you receive to, let's open up incognito mode, ws.supersecuredomain.com is going to be proxied directly to the WebSocket server. So yes, what we are going to do in the following class is, because we already have our server running and we are capable to redirect the connections correspondingly to that WebSocket server, how to configure that new host and that new port in our real-time application. And that is going to be, as I said, in the following class. See you there. Yes, at this point you have a server with your WebSocket running perfectly, and you have the capability to proxy every single request to that specific domain or subdomain to your WebSocket server with Laravel. So now what we are going to do is to verify that it is working, changing that host using that new server, that remote server. You already have that in your VPS, in your remote server working perfectly. So we are going to configure that and be sure to get it working properly. So if we go to our project, we are in our real-time applications project where we have the game, the chat, the notifications, etc. So we are going to verify how it is working currently. In fact, we are trying to connect to a local server. So what we are going to expect is to, use PHP artisan serve and get some issues from that because it is going to fail establishing the connection. So let's be sure. Let's open our browser, go to that local address. Let's say, for example, the chat. Let's log in. So the first issue is that, it is failing to broadcast the login messages. In fact, if we go to the chat and try to debug a little, you can see anyway how it is trying to connect to the local IP address and using this. Here is the location that we established as a condition to get it working on real time. So you can see this is using /app every time that is trying to establish a WebSockets or real-time connection on this. And that is exactly the connection that we need. So the only thing that we have to do here is to change the host and the port because, the protocol and the libraries that we are using is already using the app main location. Because the libraries and the projects that we are using is already sending the request to /app. So let's go to configure that. The first location is onConfig broadcasting, and there we need to change the host to the ws.supersecuredomain.com, and the port is going to be the port 80. Remember, we are just sending a regular HTTP request originally, which is going to be served by Nginx, and as it is going to add manually the app location to the path, it is going to be proxied to our WebSockets server. So once we have this, we need to go to change that as well in the resources, JS, bootstrap.js, and there we have the same host. So let's copy that, ws.supersecuredomain.com, and the same port. Everything still be the same. It is scripted. We have disabled the stats. Everything is perfectly good here, and the same here. So now, if we go and stop the server, try to compile again with npm root dep, and after this, we run our PHP artisan serve again. To take into consideration the new configuration, we should be allowed to establish the connection with that remote server. So let's use PHP artisan serve, and if we go back here and refresh, there you have. It is working on the right, and if we send a message, it is going to work exactly the same. In fact, if you want to verify, you can go to the network tab, go to the WS instead of all, WS for WebSockets, and you can see how it is establishing to ws.supersecuredomain.com using the app, and everything is working properly. In fact, if we open a new session in incognito mode and establish a connection with a new user, let's say test2, so we are going to see how we have the notifications, how the new user is in the list, and there we are interchanging messages on real time, and everything still working exactly the same. So congratulations, at this point you already deployed and are using your WebSocket server remotely, which is very good, and you can basically adapt any of your real-time applications to connect to that specific server. Of course, there is a security concern that we are going to resolve in the following section and in the following classes for that section, to be sure that we are establishing HTTPS and WSS connections with our WebSockets and with our HTTP server, in order to be sure that every message that we send here is going to be correspondingly encrypted. See you there.